depending on where you got your definition or education or knowledge on Islam, and if you're getting it from movies, you're not going to be keen to take up anything regarding Islamic. Yeah. Because if you learnt about Islam from the movies, you'd think that Muslims are terrorists, Islam is a terrorist faith. And now you're looking at the finance aspect of it. Okay, there's the banking side, but are these people now, sending money to terrorist organizations? So all these comes into play. But if you really break it down, it's, ethical banking. We talk about and we boast about Islam.
Like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, hit the bell icon so that you don't miss any new releases. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to the Campus Dialogues, a Muslim Views production in affiliation with MuslimFin Family Office. MuslimFin Family Office, building trust, preserving wealth, empowering generations. I'm your host, Salie, and we have an interesting episode for you guys this evening. Tonight, we're changing it up a bit. And the way we're changing it up is really a conversation between your host, Salie, myself, and your co-host, my good friend and colleague, Shiraaj, Buziek. We're going to have a bit of a chat. We've been in this industry for some time now, many, many years, and maybe we don't want to give our age away. But we thought that to end of 2025, it might be a great way for us to, talk about our journey, how we got to where we are, and then also talk about the Sharia-compliant finance industry, banking, investments, insurance, and where we see the next year going, 2026. So I guess this evening I'm introducing my good friend and colleague, Shiraaj Buziek. Shiraaj, how are you?
Assalamu alaikum, Ali. How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alhamdulillah. It's been quite a journey. I mean, where's the year gone? And, like you said, it's taking time out to reflect in terms of what we've accomplished, the podcast, our own careers as well. We're so fortunate, in terms of what we're doing. And sometimes we get tied into all the small things that we forget to see how fortunate, how blessed we are. So I'm definitely looking forward to tonight's conversation. I'm hoping we'll have some fun tonight, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah, I think we have to say Alhamdulillah.
No, definitely.
We are definitely exceptionally fortunate. Yeah. And interesting that you mentioned how fortunate we are. I actually remind myself every day. I write down and remind myself to stay grateful. And as I was taking the lift up to the studio today, I was thinking to myself, Alhamdulillah, Ali, you get to do Allah's work.
Allah Akbar.
And sometimes, when we sit and we think to ourselves, I have to go out and, I have to do this again and, get in my car and drive here and do that and, get that video out, whatever it may be. You always remind yourself, how fortunate are you to be able to have, subscribers that are following you on this channel, that are interested in the things that you are saying, and that, are connecting with the message that you are, delivering. Yeah, but that message that you're delivering is greater than you.
100%.
It's much greater than us. It's much greater than Ali and Shiraaj. It's about, the focus on changing lives, changing families, helping people, and in many cases, saving souls.
100%. I think, definitely it's that creating that awareness around what we do, why we do it, and the impact, inshallah, it will have on the community. Like I said, we've been doing this for some time now, and, it's always heartwarming when we get the responses from our audience, even our guests, that they've enjoyed the podcast, they love what we're doing, we should continue doing it. It's always motivating. But even the responses from our audience, when they comment on our videos, when they tell us, that was an awesome podcast or an awesome episode, they're looking forward to the next one. It's small things like that keeps us going, So, look, it's been one of those years where you sort of, you get stuck in your everyday job and you don't actually know where things are going, but you have that belief, that commitment, that discipline just to keep going. And, the outcome is so beautiful. When we see what we've achieved over the year. It's amazing. And I always say, like, where's the time gone? We at the end of 2025, and I can only look forward to what 2026 holds. So, yeah, I mean, well done to you, Ali.
Yeah, no, Jazakallah khair, and obviously for you, for your support. And I think one thing that I always remind myself also is to remember that it's about the journey.
Yeah.
Yes, we're getting the results and it's happening. You know, we've achieved quite a bit over the last year, 2025, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
But it was the journey.
Correct.
It was, you know, doing the little things and doing it consistently. I think you mentioned that earlier before the show of the start of the show, sorry, where we talked about the consistency of, you know, constantly being here for our audience,
100%.
constantly trying to bring across that message and making the effort.
No,
you know?
100%. I think what we've also been blessed with was the sort of guests that we had on the show.
Yes.
Quite high caliber guests. I've really enjoyed, you know, speaking to them, engaging with them. And the beauty of it is that sometimes we don't really know the gems or the wealth of knowledge we have in our own communities. I think most of our guests that we had on the show are people from our communities that comes from humble beginnings and have gone on in their life and their careers to achieve amazing things. And what is so nice is that this show highlights those people. And I think it's important, you know, especially for the next generation, and we always speak about the students that's coming through, either matriculating, what do they do next, you know, what are they, you know, they're always confused, not sure what they study. Do they go to university? Do they become an entrepreneur? And I think when you have guests that's had, you know, the type of careers they've had and sharing with us their journey, their hardships, their difficulties they're overcoming to be what they are today, I think that's really motivating to the next generation. And it also shows, you know, the next generation that anything is possible. And then one message that always comes across is that, you know, it's never easy. But that journey of obstacles and difficulties, it's actually what shaped the people that we have on our show. And you listen to the stories and you're always inspired, like, wow, you know, his parents probably, you know, in some cases, example, his parents probably died early, as an example, or he failed at university, or he got fired. But that consistency, and you spoke about the consistency and the dedication to still, you know, go at it and then come out on the other end, you know, being what you are today. That message is always very inspiring for me on the show.
And I think that's one thing that we try to do on the podcast is to highlight all these gems, as you call them, in our community, because we have so many of them and they're doing amazing things. And a lot of times what's happening is they're not being highlighted because, you know, our attention and our focus is somewhere else. And a lot of times, you know, people are busy. Everyone's busy. We have jobs, we have families, we have goals, we have things that we want to achieve. And in between that, we have a bit of time and we do maybe a bit of scrolling, and, you know, we have, you know, some time to dedicate to long form YouTube videos, let's say.
Yeah.
But it's important that, you know, as a podcast, as a show, from MuslimFin Family Office perspective, what we try to do is we try to get in front of our audience, you know, to say we want to make it convenient to be able to highlight these gems that we have in our community.
Not just highlight, but for them to relate to our guests. Like I said, a lot of our guests, most of our guests are from our own communities. And if you listen to their journeys, I think our vast part of our audience can actually relate to their journeys, to their upbringing, you know, those humble beginnings, you know, whether it's sports in the communities, whether it's the schooling, whether it's madrasa, whether it's the ulama from our communities. A lot of us can actually relate to them, and I think that brings it home to most of our viewers.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about, you know, the way we grew up and kind of our backgrounds and those types of things, very few of our audience actually know you, Shiraaj, Mr. Buziek. So just to put you a little bit on the spot, I thought, you know, maybe you could just tell us a bit about you. You know, what's interesting about Shiraaj is that I end up finding out things about you as we go on. It's like, oh, I had no idea Shiraaj knows this person, or he actually is, you know, he's achieved this or that. So maybe tell us a little bit about you, Shiraaj, and then it'd be nice, I guess, for the audience to get to know you.
Well, it's not something I do very well, speaking about myself. It's perhaps something I should work on. But yeah, I've had to date an amazing career, amazing life. Alhamdulillah, I'm married to a beautiful wife with 2 beautiful kids. And then I was fortunate enough to, further my studies abroad. So I obtained a scholarship to study in Indonesia, in the city of Jakarta at the University of Islam Negeri there. And I, went into the field of Islamic finance and economics. And I think that's where my passion actually grew.
Yeah.
And it's a bit different because if you look at the dynamics of Indonesia versus South Africa, firstly, there are a lot of similarities because if you look at our history as Muslims in the Cape, a lot of our forefathers are actually from Indonesia. Yeah. So when I was studying in Indonesia, I could relate to a lot of our cultural things that we have in Cape Town, whether it's our hadat, our ratips, the way we do name giving, the way we salute, all of those cultural things that we practice in Cape Town, you'll find there. Even some of the words, the language, like our forefathers used to say kaparangs or kalap.
So kaparangs for the audience is the wooden slipper.
The wooden slipper, correct.
What's glap?
Glap is like lightning.
Okay.
So I remember my grandparents always used to say, die donder weer glap.
Yeah, okay, yes.
So it was the thunder that hits. Yeah. And some of those words are still, actually goes back to Indonesian language.
Okay.
So it was an amazing experience to be able to study there, understanding where we as Muslims come from a religious perspective. So our forefathers, Sheikh Tuan Guru, was from Makassar, from Indonesia. So to be able to go back there and to study was somewhat a highlight of my studies. And once I finished there, I came home and I was fortunate to work in retail in the financial industry. I moved around between ABSA, Old Mutual. I worked at SASFIN, and then into private banking at RMB Private Bank. Then I moved over to FNB. So, over that entire period, I've gained a lot of knowledge and experience in the field of finance, and more specifically Islamic finance. Whether it's the dealing with clients, creating that awareness around the Sharia-compliant products, whether getting involved in developing of these products. So, yeah, I've been extremely fortunate, and I look back on my career and what's to come with a lot of pride in terms of what I've achieved, but I look forward to the future in terms of what more I can do, inshallah, for the community.
Alhamdulillah. Now, just so it's a 6-year program.
Correct. So
in Indonesia.
Yeah.
And just tell us a bit about that, because I think until I met you, I haven't really met many other people from South Africa who go to Indonesia to study and Islamic finance specifically.
Yeah.
A lot of people are only starting to find out about Islamic finance now. Yeah. I mean, I had a conversation with someone just today saying that Islamic finance seems to be quite new in South Africa. And I'm thinking, Islamic finance has actually been around for 30 odd years or even longer.
Yeah.
I think 50 years or something like that. So it's been around for almost half a century already, just from the South African context. How is it that you were exposed to that at such a young age, where many of us at that time probably didn't even know that Islamic finance existed?
Yeah, so again, when I arrived in Indonesia, at that particular point, I still wasn't sure what I was going to do.
Okay.
For me, it was an opportunity to travel. Number one, going to a new country, just exploring and it's all these new things, a new country, food, the weather, new people. Just the idea of traveling that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I went.
And how old were you at the time?
I think I was about 20 years old.
Okay.
And at the time when I started studying in Indonesia, or before I took up the studies, Islamic banking sort of just launched in South Africa.
Okay.
And I
Islamic banking.
Islamic banking.
Okay. So was that with Al Baraka?
So it was with Al Baraka Bank, and then FNB had the first product. I think it was Islamic vehicle finance that they offered at the time.
Okay.
But it was very new to South Africa in that context. Yes. However, Indonesia, they have a thriving Islamic banking financial industry. So I thought, what, perhaps this would be actually a very good field to go into, seeing that Islamic banking will be taking off in the next couple of years in South Africa. And at the time, there weren't many institutions in South Africa. In fact, there was no institution in South Africa offering any, degree or diploma in Islamic finance. So I then studied there, and the way the curriculum or the studies were structured is that, look, your first 3 years you sort of do your island course. You study you start Islamic studies, your Quran, Hadith, all of those in your first 3 years, and then after 3 years you then specialize in a specific field. So you have students either go into Islamic law, into Hadith, into Sirah, and one of the fields was Islamic finance, and that's what I took up.
Okay.
So then for the next 3 years I then sort of specialized in Islamic finance and banking.
Okay. But so you're saying that because what year was that when Al Baraka? Because I thought they were.
So
I thought they started in the 80s already.
correct. So Al Baraka started back in the 80s, but to give you context of the landscape at the time, when Al Baraka started, one of the products they brought to the market was the Islamic home loan, and the way that the home loan was structured at the time, it was very difficult for people to take up that particular product. And the reason for that is that the Islamic home loan back then, and I'm talking years ago, was structured on sort of a Murabaha style, where the bonds were structured over a 7-year period.
Oh, sure. So the payments were very high.
The repayments were very high. So a lot of people couldn't actually access that product, And Al Baraka Bank came under a lot of criticism because, are we offering a product for the masses, for the communities, or is it only for the rich?
Okay.
But I would like to think that, that was a product that was launched, but it was work in progress. If you look today, the way it's structured is quite different to how it started.
Correct.
Today you have bonds, Islamic home loans that are structured very similar in terms of the term as, the conventional home loans you'll find. So, the products are almost aligned and almost reflects what you can currently get in the market. But that came over years of development, innovation to where we are today. So at the time, I took up Islamic banking, and my thesis was actually on one of the products that was offered at Al Baraka Bank versus a product that was offered at a bank in Indonesia, Bank Muamalat. But the outcome was a bit skewed in the sense that, look, it's difficult to compare a country that has stats SA will tell you a Muslim population of 2%. I mean, it's debatable. I think we're a bit more than that. Compared to a country that's 95% Muslim. The dynamics are different. The regulatory environment is different. But I think there was a lot of learnings in terms of how Indonesia was doing it and how that we could take as a country in terms of Islamic banking and finance and the development of those products.
And I understand from Al Baraka's perspective, because if you come out into a market, you're coming out with a product that you feel is going to serve a target market. And you need to understand that as a business, when you're coming out with a solution or a product, you're serving a specific target market, and you're a business.
Correct.
So at the end of the day, you need to try to make money. And you need to keep, I guess, the shareholders happy, from that perspective. But over the years, they've been able to innovate. And now when you go to an Islamic bank or an Islamic banking window, window, automatically you'll see that the home loan, for example, or mortgage bond is on the exact same kind of level as that of a conventional mortgage bond, although it's structured completely differently. And the Islamic mortgage bond is Sharia-compliant.
Yeah, no, 100%, Ali. I think today, if you go to an Islamic institution that offers Islamic banking products, you can almost find exactly what you can find on the conventional side in terms of products, whether it be your checking account, whether it be a home loan or vehicle finance or investments. You'll find the Islamic compliant alternative to it. And it's structured in a way that it's not, new to people. The way you actually go and applying for these products are very similar to how you would apply for conventional products. So it's not like people will get there and they will not know what is going on. This is a whole new concept. When you actually go and apply for these products, it's exactly the same process you will go through in applying for a conventional home loan or conventional vehicle finance. You still got to do the application. You still got to qualify for that financing. The question that normally comes up is that, if it's Islamic banking, how are these banks actually making money? I think that's one of the biggest questions that comes out, because as we know, and by now people know that Islamically, we don't get involved with riba or interest. And people will tell you about banking is built on interest. You know, so where the banks will give you the money, you'd buy the asset, and you'll pay back that money plus interest over time. So if we are saying that Islamic banking then doesn't deal with interest whatsoever, how are Islamic bankings making money? And that concept seems to be some sort of a hurdle for people taking up because they don't understand the product, how it works, how it's structured, and they become sort of hesitant to take up that product. So there's a lot of work to be done in terms of creating that awareness initially, and then obviously the making people understand how these products work, the knowledge around the product, and hopefully, inshallah, we'll see the take-up of these products.
You know, absolutely, and I agree with you 100%. That's the thing, it's the awareness.
Correct.
So for me, from my perspective, what I'm finding is, so the argument presented to me sometimes is that, okay, look, you know, if we look at our community, let's say the very wealthy business people in Cape Town, Johannesburg, and in the major cities, they are used to dealing with interest, okay? So you're going to find it hard for them, or to convert them almost, or to convert their wealth from conventional to Islamic, because they still feel like they're used to doing things a certain way. And, you know, you're going to have to first create that awareness for them to say, look, there's an alternative, okay, to the conventional and generating interest. And the alternative actually provides you the same, and in certain cases, even better returns than the conventional. But here you have a Sharia-compliant solution. And I think what we also have to, and you don't want to be harsh or tough on the community, but you know, there is also a responsibility on the community side to go out and seek, you know, these types of solutions. So once we create the awareness, and you know, whoever's watching sees this, you know, make the effort, even if it's slowly, but at least make the effort to find out, okay, well, really, I mean, what is the difference between a Sharia-compliant product and a conventional product? And when you do just a little bit of, you know, surface research, you'll say, okay, well, okay, I get it. It's in the contract. It's in the niyyah. It's in the way it's structured. It's in the way, you know, it's put together.
Yeah.
It's not earning money on money. It's earning money on an asset. It's sharing of risk. It's profit sharing.
Correct.
It's, you know, and that's very different because that's business. And making a profit is halal, but earning interest is haram.
Yeah, I think it also stems down to the point that, you know, for a very long time, we did not have the option of Islamic banking and finance. So people were used to the conventional way of banking. And so now you introduce this Islamic banking system, and people just don't understand how it works. So, like you said, is that, you know, these almost, we sort of almost have to give Islamic banking that period to grow. You know, that creating that awareness in that period, being innovative and developing new products for the community, and almost sort of be able to provide a solution or solutions that they currently have in the market conventionally. So when I say conventionally, your normal products, whether it be home loans, your investments, your vehicle finance, and to say, listen, now we can actually offer you the Sharia-compliant alternative to it. Again, the process in terms of the application and applying and getting this product is exactly the same as conventional. So that is out of the way. So what is stopping people actually taking up the product? So a couple of things, and again, when institutions or businesses develop products, they look at two things. You mentioned it earlier in your response where you're saying that businesses will develop a product because they also need to make money.
Yes.
So yes, we will develop a product because there is a need for it in the community. But these institutions, like you said, will look at how do they make money? How do they scale that particular product? And again, it comes back to the dynamics of our community, South Africa. Again, we 2 to 3% of the population. So how much more do you want to scale it in that context?
Yeah.
And then we come back, and we've had this discussion numerous times, but, you know, if you actually think about it, we almost termed it Islamic banking, and we've created almost a restriction around it. in the sense that people will now assume that Islamic banking and finance are only for Muslims or people of the Islamic faith. And further to that, depending on where you got your definition or education or knowledge on Islam, and if you're getting it from movies, you're not going to be keen to take up anything regarding Islamic. Yeah. Because if you learnt about Islam from the movies, you'd think that Muslims are terrorists, Islam is a terrorist faith. And now you're looking at the finance aspect of it. Okay, there's the banking side, but are these people now, sending money to terrorist organizations? So all these comes into play. But if you really break it down, it's, ethical banking. We talk about and we boast about Islam not just being a religion, being a way of life. Islam teaches us how to clean ourselves, how to pray, when to pray, how to, do our marriage. What do we do on the time of death in terms of the cleansing? How do we deal with our inheritance, our wealth? Every aspect, how to raise a family, our kids and that. What to eat. We need to eat halal, what we can and what we can't eat. But Islam also teaches us how to deal with our finances. So a lot of people are saying, but you know what? We're not living in an Islamic community or an Islamic country, so what does it matter whether I take up an Islamic product? It's almost hypocritical, because if the Sharia doesn't apply for your money, then why do you still make salah when you're living in a non-Muslim country? Okay. So if you're going to, follow the deen, follow it fully. So now when we move past that particular point, people are saying, but how true is Islamic finance? So the questions we're now getting around Islamic finance industry is that, it's nothing more than conventional, that we're rebranding some of the terminologies like interest with profit. And we're just trying to get our share of the pie when it comes to the Islamic financial industry, which has grown billions, trillions, that. So those are the type of questions we're starting to fend off from the community in terms of, is Islamic banking really real? How are you operating without interest?
And I think sometimes what we as a community in South Africa, the Muslim community in South Africa, tend to miss is that, the amount of opportunity within the Islamic finance industry, specifically from South Africa, and for South Africa being a launch point almost into the rest of Africa. So when we do the analysis on, for example, developed markets, in terms of the access to the internet versus, the rest of Africa. So if you look at the United States and parts and Europe, for example, Western Europe, 90%, access to, the internet.
Correct.
When you come to, let's say, South Africa, 73%, and that's changed considerably, right? But when you look at the rest of Africa, in terms of internet access, it's about 34%. Now, when you look at South Africa and the way South Africa actually does business, most of those transactions happen via mobile. Okay, so that internet access and mobile transactions into other parts of Africa, Africa and South Africa South Africa is probably the leading country in mobile transactions globally. Now, we may not be paying attention to this, but in terms of scaling, let's say, the conventional side is paying attention to it. The banks are paying attention to it. The other institutions in terms of payment systems are paying attention to it. So the Muslims need to become a bit more innovative and realize, in terms of scaling, there's actually massive opportunity being part of South Africa and South Africa's, in terms of, because South Africa has a financial sector that is part to none for the rest of Africa. And in many cases, I didn't even realize that, for example, as MuslimFin family office, we are the first Sharia-compliant family office in South Africa. You go into the rest of Africa, you can't even find a financial advisor. An advisor needs to fly in from London or from Dubai or from South Africa, okay, into another African country to provide advice to, someone sitting in Kenya, to someone sitting in Zimbabwe. So as a Muslim community, I think it's important for us firstly to have the awareness, like you said, but then to also realize that we are sitting on massive opportunity here, and massive opportunity for us to actually generate massive amounts of wealth. So in terms of scaling, when you talk about scaling, as a family office and as the first family office in South Africa, what we found was very interesting is when we go to the larger financial institutions, they are very keen to partner with us. And they are saying, we see the opportunity.
Correct.
The only problem is that there isn't anybody actually driving these solutions. So we are quite keen to develop the solutions because we understand that not only is it about the Muslims of South Africa, which you mentioned maybe 2%, 3% debatable, okay? But it's also the 2 billion Muslims that are paying attention to the rest of Africa and saying, okay, well, if we want to invest in Africa, where do we need to go? Well, guess what? We need to go to South Africa because the regulatory system is fantastic. They have the ability to manage allow for large sums of wealth to be transferred safely, securely. Okay, so I think what we need to do is kind of get out of that train of thought that even though we are a minority in South Africa, at 2%, at 3%, there's massive opportunity here. We're still part of a global ummah who is close to 2 billion people.
Yeah, it's a beautiful point you make, and South Africa is seen sort of as a springboard into the broader Africa. But if you bring it back to the community, in terms of what we've achieved over our span here in South Africa, we are now as a community almost, in every sphere of life. Whether you talk about education, we talk about medicine, we've got Muslims in every sphere, politicians, accounting, finance. And we've got specialists in South Africa. We've got scholars in South Africa, that actually assist, develop, and advise on these particular products. So we talk about 2-3%, but if we look at our communities, we have the facilities in place. We've got, like I said, we've got specialists, we've got the scholars to be able to drive this industry forward.
Shiraaj, Buziek, my co-host, let's leave it right there because we are going to have a part 2 to this to this podcast. So if you enjoyed this show, please give us a thumbs up, leave a comment, hit the bell icon, and keep watching for part 2. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.